a PC gamer interview. Elden Ring Nightraign, hands-on, 6 hours with FromSoft's wild next co-op roguelike action RPG remix. So they did play it. We played the Elden Ring spin-off and talked with FromSoftware about what to expect from the 2025 game. That's a sick picture, by the way. What the hell? FromSoftware producer Yasuhiro Kitao asked us to forgive him if he seems nervous. He doesn't, but I've already sweated through my socks if I was in his shoes. He's about to let us play FromSoftware's next game a full week before the rest of the world learns it exists. It looks like, and I say this with zero shade, kind of like a mod, which is actually what a lot of people have been saying. Modders delight in remixing FromSoftware's RPGs, which of course, you know, we freaking play all the crazy mods. Ditch fall damage. Hey, what's that? Crank up the speed by 150%, ditch fall damage, throw in a ton of random loot, and some other roguelike-y variables, and you've pretty much got Elden Ring Nightraign. Which pretty much, there you go. Like, it's a roguelike where loot is randomized in the world, maybe, and you kind of all have to get gear, which, by the way, sounds pretty freaking cool. Especially this part right here. I think that's maybe the best addition that they're going to have in this game. The raw animal thrill of a great roguelike build. Yeah, because I guess you can have that situation, right? Where you just get yourself OP as hell. The chest-thumping glory of slicing a 6-foot katana through the guts of Margit, the Fell Omen. Procking a bleed that chunked off 10% of his health bar, which is not that much, and then mashing my character's special ability to double all the damage. So it sounds like there's also abilities which have different effects, which is kind of what I thought, right, when we saw the Eagle guy. Nightraign is simultaneously part Elden Ring and part totally new ground for a studio that's gotten very comfortable making a certain type of RPG over the past decade. The spin-off makes a perplexing first impression, treating Elden Ring's weapons, enemy types, and starting zone, Limgrave, as an all-you-can-reuse asset store. The vibes get even stranger when you see Battle Royale-style wall of deadly rain encircling the map, and characters dashing around on foot like they're set to permanent fast forward, which is kind of what I thought as well. It's super fast. Now nimbly mantling cliffs and walls, it seems almost sacrilegious to take the pieces of a game that was so microscopically assembled to go hog wild with them. If Da Vinci wanted to repaint the mode, alright man, come on. Nightraign is an Elden Ring Turbo, a condensed 3-player roguelike with a little dash of Monster Hunter to it. So it is 3-player. Nightraign is Elden Ring Turbo, condensed 3-player roguelike with a little dash of Monster Hunter to it, as you choose a final boss to face at the end of each 30-minute-ish runs. That's assuming you survive 2 days of the circle enclosing to a focal point somewhere in Alt Limgrave, each night culminating in its own tough boss battle. When I started my first session by dropping onto the map from a spectral bird, the entrance was so Fortnite coded, I wondered if FromSoftware was joining the live service party with a battle pass. So from the looks of it, it's almost like you start off on this eagle, he drops you into the world. It kind of has that vibe where everything, you have nothing to start off with, and you're in a Limgrave sized area, which is pretty big. Like, Limgrave is huge. You scour around for loot and go get loot boxes and armor until it culminates to each night where you fight a single boss every single night. So it's kind of like a BR game, kind of, a little bit. Roguelike BR? Once it becomes nighttime, you fight a boss, and it seems like each run is not that long, about 30-ish minutes. We wanted to have a game that felt like a complete package out of the box on the day of purchase, so everything is unlockable. It's not what we'd consider a live service game, says director Junya Izakashi. So Miyazaki is not actually the director, who served as the as the battle director on Elden Ring, and has been with FromSoftware since the original Dark Souls. Nightraign will get some post-release balance updates. I love how they're talking about the updates already, as Elden Ring itself did. But beyond that, we're still in the process of thinking about the possibilities. Nightraign is Ishizaki's baby. Via an interpreter, he told me that he'd been brewing game ideas when President Miyazaki suggested he try directing. That's kind of cool. I like the idea of Miyazaki just straight coming up to him and be like, hey, you ought to direct the game. maybe you should try it. It was pretty fucking awesome. That's what I love about like FromSoft, and with like Miyazaki being the CEO or whatever, he kind of seems to give, you know, he grows them in-house, right? And he really has these people that he works with for decades, and then just goes like, you know what, you'll do the next game. He put together the pitch and got the green light. The one bit of guidance that sticks out is that he basically said, do it as you please for this project. Wow, Miyazaki just was straight up like, hey, go get it, man. It's a lean and unusually straightforward game for From Software. No PvP elements at all. No invasions. Oh, chat. No invasions. RIP PvP. So no PvP. No esoteric multiplayer covenants a la Dark Souls. We wanted to have a sense of accomplishment from each defeat and each success, and we wanted this to be different from Elden Ring and past titles. Win or lose, you'll end a run with relics you can equip in future sessions, offering a range of buffs to HP or magic attacks, or probably like rings and shit like that, or even basic actions. I found one relic that made my healing flask also heal my allies. Huge benefit when each only had 4 to quaff before running dry, so you only got 4 heals. And you have different abilities, different rings and stuff. Oh, there we go. Preset heroes with unique attributes replace the character creator. Okay, so that's kind of what... So it's preset characters with different abilities. Wow, this is a very different game than I expected, to be honest. The Lith Duchess, which is probably the girl that we saw, for example, has a tiny HP pool, but dodges attacks with a Bloodborne-style quickstep instead of the usual roll. The characters are cool, and so are their abilities, empowering additions to combat systems that's always been more deliberate than razzle-dazzle. Still, there's something odd about this mashup that plucks bits and pieces from roguelikes and battle royales and even hero shooters and uses them for seasoning in a boiled-down pot of Elden Ring. I asked Ishizaki what he'd say to players who view the changes as From Software simply copying what popular other games do. So that's pretty crazy. I told you guys, it seems like battle royale stuff in there, roguelikes. It's gonna be a weird game. The focus was condensing this experience down. The RPG elements, the exploration, the character building, and leveling. We wanted that to feel like it was coming together and culminating into a boss fight, but in a more concentrated form. For this new sense of accomplishment that you wouldn't quite find with Elden Ring or our previous titles, we felt like we needed some new mechanics and some new elements to add into that mix. We've never really held the stance, let's absolutely not do anything that other companies are doing and not follow any trends. So we didn't really see this as chasing a trend, but we saw these as interesting elements that could work well in our multiplayer focused session based gameplay. Which I actually like that. I think it's always dumb if somebody does something that's cool in a video game or that's interesting, and anytime any other game does it, people just go like, it's fucking copying. Like, I like the idea of like each working off each other. Listen, the amount of fucking studios that have bit the gameplay style that FromSoft like basically makes Souls like its own genre at this point, right? Like, there's no way they shouldn't be allowed to also kind of bite a couple other things and pop it into their games. My favorite thing about Night Rain almost immediately is the addition of 2 unique abilities per character that totally change how I play. The characters themselves aren't quite classes, but the Duchess is a clear glass cannon DPS, able to double the damage she and her allies have dished with her restage ability. By the end of the day, I was yelling, "Run it back!" to my oh my god. Playing Duchess when I used the Knight character, Weidler's grappling hook to zip towards a boss, then drop his ult, a fiery charged explosion that deals immense damage at close range. So it's kind of cool because from the looks of it, they each do have multiple abilities, and you'll be able to combo those stuff together, like do this big explosion and then double the damage of that explosion. That's pretty interesting. As with Street Fighter 2 Turbo, the bombastic new moves are thrilling, even if they feel slightly bolted on to an existing combat system. Does that's the name, by the way, Wilder, only have a grappling hook because From Software already had the physics code for that exact mechanic ready to go from Sekiro? The default controls, at least currently, are a bit awkward. Instead of getting their own dedicated buttons, the abilities require first hitting triangle at the same time as one of the triggers. This mostly worked fine, but the occasional mispress had me swapping... had Had you swapping two-handed sword grip instead of using your ult at a key moment. Yo, wait, what the fuck? That's the Dark Souls 2 spider. That's the Dear Duke Freya. As the all-rounder knight archetype, Wilder is emblematic of how different Night Rain feels from the usual single-player Souls game. The quick cooldown on his grappling hook gives him a huge agility boost over the usual default plodding sword and board playstyle. There's also a mage, a tanky heavy knight, and 4 other characters I didn't set eyes on, but broadly speaking, any character can use almost any weapon from a staff to a colossal greatsword. Weapons come with random buffs attached, including passives that are in effect as long as you keep them in your limited inventory. I've always lamented how rarely I end up changing builds in a Souls campaign, so being forced to make do with what I find on the field while also benefiting from what I choose to do, keep in my pocket, is a delightful change. Yeah, I mean, it literally has all the elements of a roguelike. That's so interesting. When I first drop onto Night Rain's map, I don't know how to decide where to go. So I dash towards the nearest fort and immediately get in over my head at level 1. You're extremely squishy, but there's always a low level camp not far away that serves as an easy source of runes to farm for 1 to 2 levels and a couple of weapon pickups. Sites of Grace dots have the map to refill your flasks and let you level up your stats in one go. Okay, so yeah, like you have Sites of Graces in the world, you can level up in there, but these are all just one run. No RPG picking and choosing, but they no longer provide a completely safe haven. After a few minutes of free exploration, the circle starts closing, pushing me towards the eventual first night's boss fight. We died to the demi-human swordsman and queen. A pair of Elden Ring bosses will be absolutely curb stomping within a few hours. The circle that usually in BR games works as closing all the people in together, it almost closes you into a boss fight and pushes you towards the more difficult boss fight. That's pretty interesting. As with most roguelikes, knowledge and familiarity will take you a long way in Night Rain. 4 hours after starting, my co-op squad had our strategy down to a science. Land, hit the nearest outpost, grab a couple levels, any weapon with useful passive skills, then beeline to the nearest church, which will present us with an extra healing flask. Okay, so it still works the same way where you find the heals at churches, the Marcus, big Marcus statues. Stop along the way only for easy fights. Stay grouped up if anyone encounters a field boss we think we can take, like the weak sauce perfumer who dies in a few hits as long as you avoid his one lazy fire attack. If we have time, we rush to a second church before the end of day 1. Our goal is to get at least 3 of the 4 that are spaced around the edges of the map by the end of day 2. So that's the thing that they've been saying. Like, you have 2 days to prepare for like the big main final boss. Interesting. So I wonder what the hell like the story's gonna look like. Calling out targets and abilities is key. Against Night 1's boss, we gang up on the fast but weak demi-human swordsman while ignoring the lumbering queen. Our guardian uses his ult and AoE dive bomb, which I think is the eagle, to revive one of us when we go down. You heal your allies in Night Rain by simply attacking them. That's kind of funny. By the time we fight Margit, the Fell Omen, on night 2, we're arguably over leveled. Having cleared out the fortress, deleted a dragon thanks to a massive bleed hit doubled by Duchess's restage, and even stopped by an item vendor. What the hell? There's vendors as well, to grab some smithing stone to upgrade our weapons 1 tier. We're nearly at what we think is the game's level cap of 15, so there is that. You can't just make yourself and level yourself up endlessly. There's kind of like a set level and area and bosses that you can do, but it seems like every boss for every night becomes a different boss. At least unless the main boss is the same, because I believe he said that on a different run he had the same dual boss, but different world bosses. So when you're running around the world, you have like mini bosses that spawn, but from the sounds of it, they can be like regular enemies, like just a perfumer. When we fight the final boss of our run, Cerberus stands in with some fiery bad breath, and that's this bad boy right here. That's the final boss for their run. The first time we face it, we're nervous, but it proves easier than one of the potential Night 2 bosses, a tree sentinel flanked by 2 other heavily armored riders. The second time, we barely break a sweat dodging a familiar set of From Software boss stomps, dive bombs, and fire blasts after some discouraging defeats at the hands of bosses who seemingly had overly tuned health pools. Those back-to-back wins felt good, real good. In that way that roguelikes make you want to start all over again and experience the same rush with a new build. Or if you can recreate that exact combination of items that just made you feel invincible. Like my favorite roguelikes, Night Reign seems eager to pepper gear with stats that compound in ways that range from, ooh, this would change my build, to I'm more powerful than God. But it was hard to judge those combinations in this preview. Much of the game's English text was not yet inserted, with often unhelpful fragments of item descriptions. This ultimately left me uncertain about the thing Night Reign has to get right, its map. Night Reign's map is peppered with familiar outposts, ruins, forts full of enemies, caves, and jails, which weren't functioning in the build that we played. So there are actually caves and jails and stuff around the world. And churches. While the bosses and enemies you encounter in these locations vary from run to run, I'm a bit worried that retracing my steps across the mostly unchanged topography dozens of times will get old, even with the peppering of change. But Ishizaki says the map will sometimes see large-scale changes to terrain in the form of procedurally appearing volcanoes or swamps or forests. Okay, so that's one of the things I was wondering too. I get it, right? Like roguelikes are entertaining. But like if it's the same map over and over and over and over, like will it get boring? But this makes it more interesting, definitely. And hinted at some degree of meta progression that will apply to storylines of the hero characters and the map evolving in some way as you play more of the game. We wanted the map itself to be a giant dungeon, so players have a chance to traverse and explore in different ways every time they play. You have to choose the boss you want to face at the end of the third day. Once you've made that choice, maybe you have an idea of how you want to strategize against that boss. This might change how you approach the map. We wanted to offer players that agency to decide, okay, I need to go after a poison weapon this time to face this boss. Maybe that will take me to an area I don't usually go or an enemy I don't usually want to fight. Hopefully this gives me a little more variation between runs as well. Without complete item descriptions or tooltips to help me interpret the map's many tiny icons, I can't say I developed any strategy more sophisticated than get more healing flasks. And that worked so well, it makes me a little uneasy about how much Night Reign will really demand more thought from me. The wizard towers, for example, seem painfully simple, with the puzzles to enter them never varying from a couple possible locations for a well-telegraphed hidden object to be waiting for a sworn swipe. I was already sick of reenacting the same route solutions and the same climb to the top of the tower for a treasure chest after a couple of hours. These simply need to be more complex and more varied to stay interesting for more than a couple hours to play. Yeah, which is worrying in a game meant to be played over and over again. So already, even after a couple hours, he's kind of has my thought when it comes to roguelikes and why I don't play a lot of roguelikes. And that is, it just kind of gets boring after a while, even if it's like, especially if there's no story progression. But again, this is probably early development. I'm sure there's probably a lot of work to be done. Not pulling any punches, which is good. I'm glad he's not just, kissing ass and being like, the game's incredible. It kind of gives like, this is what I like to hear, right? And it's good to know this. It's good for them to have that feedback and hopefully maybe kind of change things up a little bit, especially with the puzzles saying they're just easy, which in general, like Souls games puzzles, especially for towers in Elden Ring, weren't really too difficult at all. I hope the sort of issues are merely a symptoms of this early build and not indicative of what will hopefully be a richer, more varied strategic play space in the final game, which will be out sometime in 2025. The thrill of the higher pace will only work for so long, and when it wears off, Night Reign needs something to fill the void left by the lack of Jesus Christ, I've been talking a lot today, chat. The lack of FromSoft's famously intricate level design, which is true, that's one of the biggest strengths for FromSoft. So, or is it simply needs more maps? FromSoft has indicated that this is the map, with nothing beyond the confines of this reimagined Limgrave. Discovering there's actually a remixed Khalid and remixed Liurnia and so on and so forth would certainly assuage my worry that the terrain itself will prove a weak link. But as drastically different as Night Reign is from Elden Ring itself, I did get the sense that one thing is the same as it ever was. FromSoft still holding tight to plenty of secrets. One day Night Reign wasn't nearly enough. Okay, interesting. So there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot. Essentially, it's saying, right, that Which, by the way, already just from the sounds of this article, I don't think Night Reign's gonna be a $70 game. I think it might be like 50, 40, just from what we've seen and just from what I'm hearing. The idea of the one single map is also kind of worrying, you know. Like, is this game gonna have longevity? Like, it's almost like they have one map, but they're kind of hoping the roguelike aspects of it are gonna carry that and keep people playing for a long time, which I don't think it is. Especially considering this dude played for 4 hours and was already like, I basically knew exactly what to do. I go to this area and this area, and that's it. Especially knowing Souls fans, right? Knowing how masochistic some of us can be. I know he had this thing where he was like, oh, this I know I need to go this way for this boss because poison will work better for this boss. We're not going to fucking do that as Souls fans. We're going to literally keep slamming our face into the same boss over and over with the same strategy of just dodging and pressing R1. We ain't going to go get a poison weapon, whittle him down slowly. And that's the worrying part, right? Like, if you don't do that, you're not really experiencing all the parts of the game. And I feel like the Souls formula works extremely well when you overcome a challenge by using brute force. Yeah, level 1 runs. People are instantly day 1 100% going to be doing runs where they're not leveling up. They're going to just go in with their fists literally and run to the final boss with just their fists. You already know that's going to happen within a day or two. 100%. So if you don't do that roguelike thing, you know, is the game going to get repetitive even faster than you're expecting, right? Especially with the one map. Even Limgrave being pretty big, I think the caves and all that stuff, the jails, will make it more interesting. I hope that they have stuff like, let's just say you go into a jail, right, and you have the potential to get like a legendary weapon or something like that. It's going to be real interesting to see what type of like abilities and stuff that mixes together, which abilities characters have that will work really well with another character, like that synergy, right? Like that's going to be, I think, the most interesting part. I'm wondering if you can do it solo and just go in by yourself. I know a lot of people, especially like, you know, Souls fans, are now hearing that they have to play co-op. A lot of people's fucking pride comes with never playing co-op and always playing solo and never summoning. Those players are not even gonna, they're not gonna touch this game. They're gonna be like, I ain't even gonna fucking play co-op. I'm playing by myself, fist only. I do think you're gonna be able to play solo and you won't be forced to do co-op. The bosses as well, I know that they said there's main bosses, which I do think are going to be the new bosses, which is still so weird why you see like Nameless King there. I have no idea where that side of like the new bosses is coming from. But I think some of the new bosses we saw were like the Cerberus and like the dragon and stuff. And then it seems like a lot of the mini bosses are kind of like, you know, when you go into a castle and there's a knight, and then the knight has a health bar and his name is like Knight of Grumblebs, and he's just kind of like a mini boss. I think you're gonna have like, you know, the perfumer of, I don't know why so many people are from these places that are so hard to say, but I'd imagine it's gonna kind of be like that. And then obviously it's just gonna, there's gonna be main bosses, like main big scary bosses like Margit that he mentioned, Nameless King probably, you know, shit like that. Add Consort Melania. Yeah, we're gonna have a massive Melania. Hey, who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if she's part of it. New version of Melania. Obviously, there's gonna be a story. I guess we'll see where it leads. But I'm no matter what, freaking excited for this. I cannot wait to see where the hell this game's gonna go. I have no idea, man. It's absolutely wild. I love the fact that this exists. It's cool to see a standalone version of Elden Ring. It's an interesting take, and people are right. It does kind of sound like it could possibly be like, it feels like a mod that somebody made, and we'd be playing it on the channel no matter what. We're going to be playing it on the channel no matter what when it comes out next year. And one more thing before we head out. Just yesterday, they announced there's going to be a network test. So all you got to do is sign up. Sign up start in January, and the network test starts in February. So guess I'll see you guys in this game in February. Which means, by the way, it's probably going to come out around April or something like that. Usually kind of how it works. And leave a like on the video if you're still watching. Thank you if you are. Love you. All right, bye, bye, bye.